Hello, dears! Welcome back to your English class. Today, we are going to start a new lesson. That is The Fly by Walter D. Lamere. Now, recently, we did Silver by Walter D. Lamere. I hope you remember the poem, right? It was such a beautiful and relaxing poem. Some of you told me it's kind of creepy. Some of you told me that you really liked it. So anyway, it's one of my favorite poems. Today we will be doing The Fly, and by the end of the lesson we will also talk about similes, because the poem The Fly has a lot of similes, and we will be learning about them. And by the end of the lesson, you should be able to identify similes, and you should also be able to write similes on your own. So without wasting much time, let's get started. Let's have a look at the poem. Let's read the poem together. The Fly. How large unto the tiny fly must little things appear, a rosebud like a feather bed, its prickle like a spear, a dewdrop like a looking glass, a hair like golden wire, the smallest grain of mustard seed, as fierce as coals of fire, a loaf of bread, a lofty hill, a wasp, a cruel leopard, and specks of salt as bright to see as lambkins to a shepherd. Walter D. Lamere. What a beautiful poem written by him. Now, we will understand the poem line by line, and then we will have a discussion later on. So let's have a look. So the first line tells us, how large unto the tiny fly must little things appear, a rosebud like a feather bed, its prickle like a spear. So over here, the poet is telling us that these things would appear very, very large to a fly, because a fly is very tiny, right? We have all seen a fly. A fly is very tiny. So we would appear just like giants to a fly, right? Okay, so simple things in life, simple things which we see every day in life, it may appear really, really huge to a fly, or it may appear extremely huge to a ant, isn't it? It may appear extremely small to an elephant. So the poet is telling us that things, would appear differently to different things. And today we are talking about the fly. So he says the fly is very tiny. So things which are maybe just normal for us, would appear very large to a fly. So for example, he says a rosebud. Now we have all seen a rosebud. I have also given you a picture, right? A rosebud would seem like a feather bed. Why? Because a rosebud is very soft, isn't it? And a feather bed is also soft. So for a fly, when he goes and he sits on it, it would be just like a feather bed. It would be like sleeping on a feather bed. But, the prickle of the rosebud, that is the thorn of the rosebud, which you can see over here, the thorn would be just like a spear. Why? Because the size of the thorn would be very, very big for a fly, isn't it? For us, it is really tiny. But for a fly, a thorn could kill him. So he says that the rosebud would be like a feather bed, but the thorn or the prickle of the rosebud would be like a spear, And in case it touches the fly could get killed, or the fly could die, So that is your first stanza. How large unto the tiny fly must little things appear. Means the fly is very tiny, so little things, very common things would appear very large to him. The rosebud would be like a feather bed, because the rosebud and the feather bed are soft. This is one quality. And a prickle would be like a spear, because a prickle is also sharp, It can hurt you, and a spear is also sharp. It can kill you. So you can see common qualities, soft and sharp. Okay, let's go to the next stanza. A dewdrop like a looking glass, a hair like golden wire, the smallest grain of mustard seed, as furious as coals of fire. So he says a dewdrop. We all know what is a dewdrop, right? A small drop of water is called a dewdrop, right? You can see one in the picture. If you wake up early morning, okay, if you look outside on any of your leaves, okay, you would find little drops of water, and they are really beautiful, okay. They are transparent and you will see your reflection in it. So he is comparing a dewdrop to a looking glass. Remember, a dewdrop is small and it would be just perfect size for a fly, isn't it? And a looking glass is nothing but a mirror, isn't it? We use a mirror to look at our reflection. In the same way, the fly can use the dewdrop to look at his reflection. A hair like golden wire. Now, remember the poet is from an Englishman, so he talks about golden hair, okay. So you can see I've given you a picture of golden hair, and he says this golden hair looks just like golden wire, okay. Blonde hair, it looks just like golden wire, isn't it? If you actually take out just one strand of your hair, and if you look at it nicely, it would look just like a very, very thin golden wire for the fly, isn't it? We are not talking in your perspective, but we are talking from the fly's perspective. Remember the tiny fly. If you give him a strand of your golden hair, okay, it would look just like a golden wire for him because he's really tiny. Okay, in the same way, if you give him one of your hair, okay, our hair is black. If you give him one of your hair, he may think it's a snake, right? It depends on the color of the hair, okay. So if you give him a golden hair, he's thinking it's a golden wire. But if you give him a black hair, okay, because we usually have black and brown hair, he may think it's a snake, right? Okay. The smallest grain of mustard seed. So we can see in the picture over here, these are mustard seeds. They are yellow in color, okay. And imagine, okay, from the eyes of a fly, okay, these mustard seeds may look just like the burning coals of fire, okay. So he says the smallest grain of mustard seed. For you and for I, a mustard seed is very, very tiny. It's very, very small, okay. We do not bother about it. But for a fly, this mustard seed, okay, looks just like coals of fire, okay, which are very, very dangerous, which could burn you, okay. Clear? Then let's come to the next stanza. Our next stanza is a loaf of bread, a lofty hill, a wasp, a cruel leopard, and specks of salt as bright to see as lambkins to a shepherd. So he's saying a loaf of bread. You know what's a loaf of bread, right? We all have it for lunch. Sometimes we have it for tea. I'm sure most of you have eaten. I'm sure all of you have at least tasted bread once, okay? So he says, this loaf of bread, okay? Imagine it from the eyes of a fly. This bread must look just like a mountain, or it will look like a hill. Over here, the word lofty means high, okay? Very high, of great height. So he says, if a fly is sitting on, you can say over here, this wood piece over here, then this loaf of bread, how would it look to him? It would look like a huge hill or a very high hill, or it also could look like a high mountain, okay? So he's comparing the quality of height over here. Then he says a wasp, okay? A wasp, we have it over here. Very dangerous animal. If it bites you, its sting is very, very painful, right? So he's comparing this wasp to a cruel leopard, because if you can look at the picture, they have the same color patterns, isn't it? And a leopard is also very cruel. It pounces on its prey and he eats it. In the same way, a wasp is also a very cruel hunter. It pounces on its prey and it eats it, okay? So the poet is comparing a wasp to a cruel leopard, okay? For a fly, a wasp is just like a cruel leopard, because remember, a wasp is a very dangerous creature, and a wasps would like to eat flies. Okay, they eat small insects. So a fly would be a delicious dinner for the wasp. Okay, so he is comparing a wasp to a cruel leopard. Then he says, and specks of salt as bright to see. You can see a picture of salt. Now for us, that much of salt is a very tiny amount. But imagine for a fly, because a fly is very small, that salt, okay, would look just like lambkins to a shepherd. He means that the salt, okay, imagine it's spread out, okay. Imagine a small fly looking at that beautiful white salt, and in his eyes, okay, he imagines it to be little lambs, okay. To be little lambs. You can see over here the picture of lambs. Imagine lots of lambs together in a valley. How would it look from the sky? It would look white, isn't it? It would look white. So the poet is also saying that these salt grains, okay, for the wasp, it doesn't look like salt grains, but it looks like lambkins, okay, like specks of salt. It looks just like lambkins because the fly is flying, okay, and when he looks down, he sees this beautiful white salt. Imagine if you and I were to see lambkins from a great height, okay, all the lambkins together, it would also look like beautiful white, okay. So you could also imagine it to salt. Over here, we are taking the quality of color, which is white, okay. So you can see how the poet has compared things in this poem, okay. Let's have a short recap before we go to similes. Over here in the first stanza, he compares a rosebud to a feather bed. Then he says a prickle is like a spear, okay. In the second stanza, we have a dewdrop and a looking glass, hair and golden wire, mustard seed and coals of fire. In the third stanza, we have got a loaf of bread to a lofty hill, a wasp and a leopard, salt and lambkin. So you can see how he has compared things, okay. The poet has compared things, and when we compare things, okay, two unusual things, okay, we are comparing two different things because they have one similar quality. This is known as your simile. So let's have a look at our similes discussion, okay. Now when I compare two things, okay, two things, and I use the word like or as, okay, I use the word like or as, this is known as a simile, okay, this is known as a simile. For example, I can say, my brother is as tall as a giraffe. Now, my brother is a human being, giraffe is an animal, okay, they are not similar objects, but both of them are tall, so I am comparing the quality. Clear? I am comparing the quality just like over here, okay. Rosebud like a feather bed. Why? Rosebud is also soft, feather bed is also soft. So we are comparing things which have same quality but are quite different, okay. A rosebud is different, a feather bed is different. Two different objects but they have the similar quality of softness. Again, prickle is a thorn, spear is a weapon. Two different objects, but they have the same quality of sharpness, okay. Let's get back to our similes, okay. For example, the next one is, my dog is as smelly as dirty socks. Now, dog, animal, socks, object. But sometimes dogs smell, right? Yes or no? Sometimes dogs smell. And socks also, they smell. Have you ever smelled your socks after a day in school? Really smelly, right? So over here, the poet is comparing, okay, his dog to smelly socks. What is the comparison or what is the quality? It is of smell, okay? It is of smell. So he's comparing his dog, a dog, and the socks are two different objects, but the common quality is smelly.